So at the start of this whole Ukraine war, even just as it was starting to warm up with Russia putting its troops along the Ukraine border saying, "Oh, this is just exercise training. We're not going to invade." There were a lot of experts looking on at this, and trade and resources are an important factor for many countries historically when it has come to determining invasions, their course of action, the path of invasion routes, you name it. And farmland in particular was one of the big reasons for this because Putin knew that his current control, certainly even with Poland being probably one of the biggest countries that Putin has messed with, especially when it's with its supply of oil and gas. Putin knew that eventually, with the transition to greener energy, different forms of energy, and away from this traditional fossil fuels, his control over these countries, the pressure he would be able to exert, his diplomatic leverage that he would be able to do for Russia would greatly decrease. But there was another way he could control countries and control them with very, very different ways. And of course, this is controlling the price of bread. What do you need to make bread? You need wheat. Remember, Russia is the number one grower of wheat in the world just because of its farmland size. And Ukraine is the fifth largest producer of grain. And everyone said there was going to be big grain problems. And we have seen that throughout the world. These consequences of this invasion have been that. And the farmland and the areas that, shall we say, Russia wants to take are predominantly mass farming areas for Ukrainian grain. So doing this, and part of the Putin's reason for doing this is that currently you might say, oh, well, they're already number one grain producer in the world. Why would they want to take more? Well, no, you don't understand it. Doing this and taking this territory means that they are number one. No one can come close to them. And this would mean that Russia would be in a prime position to be able to deny grain shipments and massively fluctuate and alter the markets of countries permanently. And it would be 10 times worse than their energy manipulation and their denying that they have done throughout the years. You've only got to look historically of the price of bread, and revolutions, riots, civil unrest have always been keenly linked to the price of bread and how much that costs, and people rioting because they could not get a staple part of their basic food needs. And this is a key area, and why a lot of people said this is part of why Putin's decided to go for his invasion of Ukraine, to take these areas, to gain control over those wheat producing areas. And now, if we shift over to Ukraine's side of this, part of their effort, their ongoing war efforts, is you've got to be able to keep open your supply routes. And there are two key supply routes for Ukraine. Of course, you've got the European way. So obviously that is the east, going through, of course, into Poland, into sort of Romania, those main sort of land routes that they have. And then, of course, you've got the Black Sea routes. And we have seen since the very start of this war, the whole Black Sea grain agreement. This was grain going to mostly African countries. Now, that agreement has fallen through, and this grain shipment is a key, really key for helping Ukraine to continue on with its war effort. And now, with that agreement fallen through, their only way to get their grain out of the country, which will again help support their war effort, is now going to be through places like Poland, Romania, and through most of Eastern Europe to get to other markets. And we saw at the beginning of this war, especially Poland, who is again another big producer of grain in Europe, because they have a very nationalistic government, and this is unfortunately why nationalistic governments do not make good allies. Um, their key heartland demographic are farmland areas. And because of this grain crisis that went on, Polish grain, the price of Polish grain went up dramatically, which for the farmers, excellent, amazing. And even the EU was like, well, we have to be careful because we don't want to encourage a massive glut. So we're going to allow you to continue the flow of grain through your countries, but you can limit this because we don't want it to distort the markets. Now, they have recently, in the past couple of months, taken that away because they have looked at it and they said, right, Ukrainian grain is not going to disrupt any flows because, like I say, you're no longer getting a flow of grain overly that much now from Russia. So the fact that you're now having Ukrainian grain come through is not going to disrupt your markets. However, instantly, Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia have immediately defied this and said that they are going to continue with this ban, mostly because of Poland. Like I say, they are a very nationalistic government, especially Hungary as well. They have done this because they get most of their support from these farmers. And of course, these farmers are making absolute bank with the high price of grain at the moment. So they don't want the price to, well, be lowered because they're making a lot of money. And Ukraine has said, well, you're playing right into Putin's hands here. You are playing into his hands by stopping this grain. You are affecting our war effort. You are affecting, our abilities to be able to buy weapons and things like that. And unfortunately, now because this is a very nationalistic government, they have decided, I think, to play a very, very bad decision. And now Poland's prime minister has said they are no longer going to send weapons to Ukraine. This is bad. And this is because of this grain dispute that is going on. And this is escalating. This is really bad news because Poland was one of the biggest suppliers of weapons and aid to Ukraine. And with that, that's bad. And this is purely being done because of nationalists and their nationalistic government, the peace and just what was it, the Law and Justice Party, I think it is something like that they're called, I think, in Poland. This is purely being done because they want to protect their farmers, who we've said at the moment are making absolute bank off the big price of Polish grain that they can sell at the moment, and they don't not want to damage shall we say, their voting areas, regardless of the fact that doing so means you are undermining Ukrainians' war effort. And this is really, really shocking because Poland has been one of the biggest supporters of Ukraine since this started. Sometimes even in some cases, seeming as if they are absolutely ready to go charging into Ukraine to help the Ukrainians at a second's notice. To be honest, it's very bizarre that they are doing this and very strange. I can only hope that there is at least some significant form of protest in Poland that says, "Hey, knock it off." Start supplying your weapons to these guys because Ukrainian needs it more than Poland does. Unless you are you want to start something yourself, Poland, but hey, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But this seems to be just starting. Unfortunately, this is only going to hurt Ukraine, unfortunately, in the long run, I fear. But we'll see what happens with this. Hopefully, this dispute is just a bump in the road and it can hopefully be smoothed out very quickly. But we'll see what happens. But as always, like I say, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.